Could you tell me a little bit about the sort of journey that a client coming to you looking for a product design would go on?
Absolutely. And in the early stages of engaging with a client and understanding what their product idea is and whether or not we can make it possible, that's often where we have some of the most high energy fun, because our first process really, once we've heard from a client, is to get under confidentiality. So we understand that we're protecting the client's idea for them. They're very clear about that. It is their intellectual property, and they must do that with everybody they're talking to in the early stages. Once we've done that and we've got the administration out of the way, if you like, what we need to do as quickly as possible is understand where they're coming from, what they want to achieve, what their concept is, and when we have a clear idea of what the product idea is, the next task really is establishing feasibility. Is it possible? If it's possible, how is it possible? If it's possible and we know how we're going to do it, what might it cost? If we know what it might cost, we can begin to even just on a piece of a paper think about whether or not it's going to be viable in the market, whether or not there's a marketing plan at the end of it all that turns into a sales plan that turns into profit. And at that stage, very much engaged, often around a table, maybe on a conference call with a client, we'll bring in our client services person who's looking after the client. We'll have the relevant engineer involved so that he can tell us feasibly, is it possible, how would we do it? We may well bring in somebody from a manufacturing background, one of our tooling engineers, maybe a manufacturing manager, who can then link up with the engineer in this interactive process and say, yeah, if you can design it like that, I can make it like this. Question is, well, if you can make it like that, what will it cost? Maybe back to the engineer again. The engineer might say, well, what about if you made it like this? Would it be cheaper? Would it be more expensive? Would we get a better performance? Would it look better? All of these questions, very interactive, bouncing around. That's where we can really create the first real value for the client, and they can sit with us, we can bounce together, and eventually we can come up with a project plan just on the back of a piece of paper at the beginning, which is there. We then begin to cost the project so the client at a very, very early stage can begin to think, what might it cost for me to get through the next stages? Because the other thing you're trying to do all the time is reduce the client expenditure, at the same time reducing their risk. What we're looking to do when we get a new product idea come in is say, yes, it is possible. How do we prove as early as possible that it's financially viable? How do we get the client with the minimum expenditure through to where we have a rounded business proposition that they can offer up against the market then and decide whether or not it's worthy of further investment? So how do we get a design done, which is the next stage, that actually proves what the final manufacturing price will be, that represents what the product will look like, represents how the product will function, and therefore enable them to make a really detailed and informed decision about whether they're going to take the product all the way forward, or potentially whether they're going to look for external investors, or even whether they're going to potentially try and sell off the intellectual property, sell off the design, and sell off the patent. And all of this is underpinned by our ability to search the patent databases, determine whether or not, first of all, there's somebody out there who already has a patent in their area, and if they don't have a patent in their area, we'll guide a patent through to a client through to patent application so they can be fully protected and really build an intellectual property base that can lead to them having much greater profit potential in the future.